Hi everyone, I'm Jim, and today we're diving into a question that has haunted so many after a breakup. When they say it's over, is it really the end? If you've ever been in a relationship where your partner walked away coldly, leaving you with silence and a sense that you've lost all worth, then this video is for you. Because here's the truth. Behind the words, "it's over," there is often so much more than what you see. Avoidant partners don't usually leave because they've stopped caring. They leave because the emotions became too intense, too close, too real, and that closeness feels threatening to them. And here's the twist. Even when they appear distant and indifferent, their silence is rarely peace. It's a protective strategy. So why should you watch until the very end? Because I'm going to show you the psychological truth behind avoidant behavior, what most people completely misunderstand. Signs they're still quietly tethered to you, even when their words suggest otherwise. And most importantly, how to reclaim your power and stop being pulled into their cycle of distance and control. This isn't about manipulation. It's not about chasing. It's about understanding their patterns so you can make healthy, empowered choices for yourself. If this resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what I'm about to share might just transform the way you see love and your own worth. At the end of this video, I'll leave you with a powerful message that will keep you from ever losing yourself in a relationship again. Let's dive in. Let's start with a truth that most people never see. When an avoidant person says, "it's over," or disappears into silence, it doesn't always reflect how they truly feel. Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? On the surface, it looks final. The door is shut, the conversation ends, and you're left standing in an overwhelming void. But pause for a moment, look deeper. What seems like the end is often not the truth, but an illusion designed to protect them. Why do they need this illusion? The answer lies in the nature of the avoidant attachment style. These individuals fear closeness as much as they fear abandonment. It's a paradox, yet it's the emotional reality they've carried for years. When intimacy deepens, when you get close to their most vulnerable parts, it triggers an inner alarm. If I let them in too much, I'll lose myself, I'll be consumed, I'll get hurt. And to escape that suffocating feeling, they do what feels safest: they pull away. For them, saying "it's over" or disappearing is a survival strategy. It's like pulling down a steel gate to protect themselves from an emotional storm. By creating distance, they regain a sense of control. They believe that if they're far enough, they're safe. But here's the critical truth. This doesn't mean they've stopped caring. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. They care so much, it overwhelms them, and stepping back feels like the only way to breathe. So what does this tell us? That "it's over" is rarely an emotional full stop. It's often a signal that they're drowning in feelings they don't know how to manage. They're not leaving because you're not enough. They're leaving because they're not equipped to handle the depth of the connection. And here's another reality. Their silence is not peace. Many interpret that quiet as indifference. They don't care anymore. But the truth? An avoidant silence is often the loudest scream of fear. While you're trying to figure out what happened, they're battling a storm of contradictions, wanting love but fearing it, craving closeness but terrified of losing freedom, yearning to be seen but afraid of being hurt. This is why you must remember, don't trust the mask of indifference they wear. It's often just that, a mask. Beneath it, they're still connected to you, though they lack the courage to admit it. And this is where so many go wrong. They hear, "it's over," panic, and start chasing, texting constantly, proving their worth. The result? They accidentally confirm the avoidant's deepest fear. Love means being trapped. Love means pressure. Understanding this changes the entire game. When you stop seeing "it's over" as a sentence, you begin to see it for what it really is: a temporary wall, not a locked door. And that realization sets you free from being manipulated by silence to stepping into your power, choosing to respond instead of react, choosing your value over their distance. Once we recognize that "it's over" is merely a temporary wall rather than a locked door, let's move to the next point. They fear intimacy as much as they fear abandonment. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, distance is not just a choice, it's an instinct for survival. When a relationship grows deeper than what feels safe to them, when moments of closeness get so intense that they can hear your heartbeat or feel the warmth of your embrace, an internal alarm goes off. If I let them in too far, They'll see everything, my weakest, most vulnerable parts. They don't leave because their heart has run out of love. They leave because the bond between you has become too powerful, exceeding the emotional risk threshold they can tolerate. Intimacy doesn't merely draw them into unfamiliar emotional territory, it triggers a cascade of old memories. Memories of past hurts, times they felt trapped in a relationship with no escape. It could be the image of arguing parents, a friend who abandoned them, or moments when they felt overwhelmed by others' expectations. Thus, when the emotional tide between you swells beyond what they can handle, they retreat, they go silent, they declare, "It's over," as a sturdy shield for self-preservation. Uttering, "It's over," is their moment to reclaim control. In their inner world rife with turmoil, control is a temporary balm. They believe that by erecting a clear boundary, you will step back, and they won't have to face the fear of loving and possibly being abandoned. In reality, however, it's their way of escaping the risk of dependence on your feelings, on how you might react, on whether they can shoulder emotional responsibility. Yet the truth is, deep inside, every avoidant person lingers a longing for relational safety. They want to be loved, they want to be cherished, but they lack the skills to process emotional intensity. Hence, they polarize their options. If it's too close, they flee. If they maintain distance, they feel secure. Caught between these extremes, they oscillate endlessly. They leave you with questions about your worth, even as they themselves are strained by the tug-of-war between the desire for connection and the fear of losing freedom. Here is where you grasp the core of avoidant attachment. It's never apathy and fear. Their silence, their withdrawal, their pronouncement of the end are all methods of comforting themselves. If I don't love too deeply, I won't hurt when it's gone. But you are not a test subject for their emotional drills. When you awaken to this mechanism, you'll see they cannot both preserve distance and absorb the full measure of affection they're unprepared to handle. So, how do you face their fear while safeguarding your own worth? First, view their retreat as a battle with their inner fear, not a rejection of you. Second, establish firm boundaries. If they choose silence, you'll respect their space, but you will not accept indefinite abandonment. Finally, in protecting your heart, you'll also demonstrate to them that your waiting is not helplessness, it's self-respect. Transitioning to the next section, now that we've understood their fear of intimacy, we will explore how to cultivate active calm, the antithesis of their push-pull game, helping you protect your own value and simultaneously giving them a chance to confront their fears and step into a new, safe space. We've seen that avoidants don't leave because they've stopped caring. They leave because intimacy feels too much, triggering fears of losing freedom and being hurt. They use "it's over" as a shield to regain control and avoid emotional dependence. But that's only half the truth. If you think their goodbye means complete detachment, you're falling into a major misconception. The reality is this: their silence is not peace, it's fear disguised as distance. It may sound surprising, but look closer. After the breakup, have you noticed how they quietly linger? A view on your Instagram story, a like on an old photo, or other subtle signs that they're still there without saying a word. That's not accidental. Avoidants rarely disappear completely. In fact, they often maintain an invisible tether, ensuring they still matter in your world even when they're not ready to step fully into it. Why do they do this? Because it gives them a sense of safety. They crave closeness, but only enough to soothe their ego, not enough to face vulnerability. Here lies the paradox. They don't want to lose you, yet they don't want to truly have you either. They don't want you completely gone, but they also don't want to commit to keeping you. They seek a middle ground where they can feel reassured of your care without assuming the risks of intimacy. And this is what you need to understand. Their silence doesn't equal serenity. Quite the opposite. It's often a strategy to manage the chaos within. They still feed off your energy, even if it's just through knowing you haven't fully moved on. This explains why many avoidants silently orbit your life, sometimes for months, even years, while pretending to be detached. Why does this matter? Because this is where you're most likely to get trapped. You see their quiet engagement, and hope flickers. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they still love me. And that's when you unknowingly give them exactly what they want, the assurance that you're still there, without requiring them to change, without forcing them to face their fear. This keeps the push-pull cycle alive, leaving you exhausted in an endless game. So, what should you do? Start here. Their continued connection does not mean they're ready to love you the way you deserve. The thread they hold serves their sense of safety, not your sense of peace. Once you see this clearly, you reclaim your emotional power. You stop mistaking a like or a story view as proof of love. You realize distant attention is not real presence. And this leads us to the most crucial part. How do you break free from this silent game and turn your own silence into strength? Not to manipulate them, but to protect your heart and to stop giving power to someone who can only love you from the shadows. Now that we understand their silence isn't peace, but a defense mechanism, let's look deeper into one of the key motives behind that distance. They expect you to chase. Yes, most avoidants don't walk away hoping to disappear from your life completely. They leave with a familiar script playing in their mind that you'll reach out, send messages, call, prove you're still there, still longing for them. This isn't just a subconscious hope. It's part of a psychological cycle they've carried for years. In the avoidant mindset, love often equals pressure and loss of freedom. They grew up believing that intimacy is dangerous, that the more someone loves them, the more likely they'll be hurt or trapped. So, when they feel you getting too close, that fear spikes and they retreat. But here's the paradox. When they create distance, they still want access to the energy your attention provides. And this is where the push-pull dynamic ignites. When you react from anxiety, sending multiple texts, checking in, or overproving your worth, you unintentionally reinforce their core fear. Love equals engulfment. Your pursuit becomes evidence for the story they've always believed. If they let someone get too close, they'll lose control. And ironically, that drives them even farther away. The danger here? Every time you chase, you not only lose your sense of calm, but hand over your emotional power. You become their energy source, a resource they can tap into without accountability, without stepping into vulnerability. This sustains the cycle indefinitely. They pull away, you chase. They feel pressure, they run farther. You panic, you chase harder. And in this endless loop, only one person ends up deeply hurt. You. Picture this. Every desperate text, every social media check for signs, sends an unspoken message. You hold the power, not me. The avoidant, even unconsciously, receives that as reassurance. I still matter. I'm still in control. This is why they rarely disappear completely. They keep that invisible thread alive to ensure their emotional supply remains intact. So, what's the solution? It's the conscious disconnection, not as a game of silence to manipulate, but as a way to reclaim your emotional authority and stop being the fuel for their fears. You can't heal someone by breaking yourself. You can't prove your worth by abandoning it. What you can do is exit the game. When you refuse to chase, the loop collapses. When you choose silence, not from weakness but from strength, you send an entirely different message. I respect your space, but I also respect myself. This brings us to the next critical part: learning how to turn intentional silence into your greatest power. Not to make them come back, but to make you come back to yourself, to the peace and wholeness you've always deserved. This is the most powerful part of this entire journey. True strength lies in intentional silence. But let's clarify one thing first. This silence is not a game. It's not about manipulating them or making them crawl back. This silence is a boundary of self-respect, a wordless declaration that says, I don't chase anyone who isn't ready for real love. When you choose conscious stillness, you send a strong signal not only to them, but to yourself that your inner peace matters more than clinging to an ambiguous connection. You're no longer acting from fear of loss. Instead, you're acting from the belief that real love doesn't require pursuit. So what happens when you embrace intentional silence? First, you step out of the waiting room. You stop draining your energy decoding signals or asking, do they still care? Instead, you redirect your focus inward to healing, growing, expanding your life. That quiet becomes a sanctuary where you can breathe again, a space to remind yourself, I'm not a backup plan, I'm my own choice. Second, your silence creates a truth they can't escape. When you stop chasing and withdraw the supply of energy they relied on, the void they once filled with your attention suddenly widens. And that void unnerves them. In the push-pull dynamic, they've grown used to you being the puller. When you step back, they lose the safety net that maintained their illusion of control. At this point, if they truly value you, They'll have to step out of their comfort zone and show up fully, not as a shadow lurking from a distance, but as a real presence. Here's the key. You don't stay silent to make them realize your worth. You stay silent so you can realize your own. You cannot build a sustainable relationship by continually rescuing someone from their fears. If they're not ready to face intimacy, that's their work, not your responsibility. Silence becomes your way of saying, I will not let uncertainty erode my self-respect. It's not punishment, it's a declaration of freedom and dignity. You're not using silence to play a power game. You're creating space for truth. Either they learn to love with presence, or you move toward a love mature enough not to demand that you abandon yourself. Remember, this silence is not passive. It's a deliberate choice, a strategy of clarity. In silence, you don't just pull your energy from the game, you reinvest it into yourself. Use this time to reconnect with friends, pursue passions, strengthen your body, or simply savor the freedom you once traded for the hope of validation. And here's the paradox. When you genuinely release the need to prove your worth to them, when your silence isn't a trap but a breath of peace, you become more magnetic than ever. Not because you're trying, but because you radiate the energy of someone whole within themselves. Transition to the conclusion. This was never about whether they come back. It's about whether you return to yourself. And that, ultimately, is the power you've been searching for all along. And here's the moment that matters most. You cannot control someone else, but you can always control how you respond. Everything we've talked about today is not about waiting for them to return. It's about bringing yourself back to you. Etch this truth into your mind. They want you to believe it's over to feel safe, but that doesn't mean you have to stay trapped in the invisible cage they've built. You weren't born to be someone's emotional fuel while they run from their fears. You were born to love and be loved fully, safely, and wholeheartedly. Their silence is not peace. It's the echo of fear. And you need to ask yourself, will I keep giving my worth to someone who only knows how to love from the shadows, or will I choose to step into the light where real love lives? This is your turning point, the moment you reclaim your power with one simple choice. Put yourself first. This doesn't mean becoming cold or rigid. It means returning to your softness with clear boundaries. I deserve full presence, say no scraps of attention. When you truly believe that, your world shifts. You stop pouring energy into decoding their signals and start investing it in yourself, into dreams you've delayed, into healthy relationships, into becoming the strongest, freest version of you. Imagine a life where you're no longer tethered to ambiguity, where you don't have to guess whether someone cares, where you don't have to beg for crumbs to feel worthy. Instead, you walk with confidence, knowing real love never confuses you, it calms you. And here's my final message for you. They might still watch from afar. They might keep that invisible thread, but that's no longer your business. The only question you need to answer is, will I keep waiting in anxious silence, or will I step forward and live the life I deserve? Let your silence speak, but not the silence of hope, the silence of freedom. When you choose yourself, when you stop chasing and start living, you send the loudest message of all. I am no longer available for halfway love. I am only open to real love. And if today's message resonated with you, don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, because this isn't just a video, it's a journey to reclaim your peace, your dignity, and your inner strength. And remember, you're not just worthy of love, you are worthy of a love that is whole, from someone brave enough to meet you there. The game ends not because they said, it's over, but because you chose something greater. You chose yourself.